who do you think will be more important for the Ravens, Lamar or Derrick Henry?
Well, look, what is of the utmost importance is that Derrick Henry gets the ball 20 or more times as a rusher. Now, I'm not talking about little passes real. When he carried the ball 20 or more times this year, they went 9-0, and 7 of those wins were against playoff teams. I mean, they're 4-5 when he doesn't get it 20 times, and every time he got it 20 times, he ran for over 100 yards. So that's critical. All right. That said, I think Lamar, just by kind of virtue of the position, he's touching the ball every time, and he is going to have to make some throws. He's going to have to make some throws no matter what's going on with Derrick Henry. And Lamar also is going to have to be a running threat. You know, we saw last week that was a huge part of their game. Even when they played the Chiefs first game of the season, I mean, he obviously was running, you know, crazy in that game. So because he's going to have to run, make some good throws, and just being the quarterback, Henry's not even in, you know, every play on offense. A lot of times he's not in. So I would go with Lamar overall.
It's clearly Lamar, because when John Harbaugh talks about Lamar, there was a vision. You remember this vision?
The greatest quarterback ever.
Like, and I quote, it's going to become and be known and be recognized as the greatest quarterback to ever play in the National Football League. That's the vision that the Baltimore Ravens, John Harbaugh, Lamar, his mom, all have for Lamar. It starts in games like this. When you're going up against a guy who's in the race of MVP with you, and you have to separate yourself, not only in the eyes of what's going on this season, but for long term, this is where it starts.
Can that get in the way? Because we would say,
that's what I was going to say. Isn't that why we ended up? Isn't that exact reasoning why some people think they lost last year's AFC Championship game?
Yeah.
Because they that's the, and that would be that quote would make me nervous if I were a Ravens fan. That it's one thing to just be ground and pound when you're playing the Steelers and old Russ and divisional AFC North, whatever. But now, MVP versus MVP runner-up who don't know which side is on which side of the field, are they going to try to make this a Lamar Jackson game? Because, my answer is Derrick Henry. Because I think that if Henry is great, they can win the game even if Lamar is shaky. You know what I mean? Like,
he doesn't have to be fantastic.
Correct. And I think that there are very, very few paths to them win this game if Derrick Henry is shaky.
Okay. You know, is it more important for the Ravens, Lamar or Henry? To me, it's a non-starting point. On one side, we know the quarterback's the most important position. So obviously you need your quarterback to, you know, have a big game and be successful and all of that. On the other side of the coin, what makes the Ravens actually a really good team is that they're not dependent on one individual player. I mean, I don't mean to bring up the Kansas City Chiefs, and I'm only going to do it very briefly, but it's kind of like, what's more important, Patrick Mahomes to have a big game or Travis Kelce? And it's kind of, and they've been talking a lot about Travis Kelce being a big-time playoff performer, and it's kind of like, well, it's one and the same. And it's the same thing with the Baltimore Ravens. Like, can Lamar Jackson not have a good game and Derrick Henry have a great game and they still win? And can Lamar Jackson have a great game and Derrick Henry have a bad game? Like, it's just, the Baltimore Ravens are very team-based. Lamar Jackson is not just putting the Baltimore Ravens on his back and completely carrying a bunch of scrubs here. That's just not the case right now. And when the Baltimore Ravens went on a whole run and you know, started to pick up steam, it wasn't just because now finally Lamar Jackson's playing great, and before he wasn't playing great. Like, that's not how this season unfolded. There was always issues, you know, in any of their losses. It was collectively a team effort in a lot of ways. They collectively won and they collectively lost. I can't really remember many moments throughout this season where I could be like, Lamar Jackson really put the Baltimore Ravens on his back and won that game. It's not to say that he's incapable of doing that. That's not what I'm arguing either. I'm just saying the way how this season has unfolded. and again, I might trigger a lot of Baltimore Ravens fans, but it's like you can really point to Josh Allen's game, even against the Rams, even in that loss, or against the I'll get there, the Lions. Like you could just really point, and which is why people were saying that's the MVP, that's the MVP. And I'm not getting in a discussion of who's better. That's not the point of this. That's not the point of this. I'm not saying that Lamar Jackson has never put this team on his back ever in the history of his career. Like I'm just saying this season right now, how everything is constructed. So again, like to me, this is just a forced question to try to create a divide. That it's like, who's more important, Lamar or Derrick Henry? Which MVP? And it's just like, for what purpose of that, is that right now? I don't understand. I don't go into this game and say, oh man, if Derrick Henry doesn't get going, they can't win. And if you say that, they can, if Lamar Jackson doesn't get going, they can't win. But it's like, well, can the Chiefs win without Patrick Mahomes playing well? Can the Buffalo Bills win without Josh Allen playing well? Like that's what I'm saying. I don't get it. So I'm trying to answer this question in many different ways, or try to feel like, how can we step up here where it's like, okay, like more important for the Ravens, Lamar or Henry, but like, are we saying that like Lamar could just have a bad game, or he just needs to have a baseline game? Like that's right. It just doesn't really connect to me. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't get what we're trying to say here. What are we trying to sell here? More important that they have a huge game? Like, is that what we're saying? Like, can Derrick Henry just kind of like disappear? And if Lamar Jackson has a big game and they can still win, or vice versa? Like, it just, I just can't get there. I can't wrap my head around it. It just doesn't make sense to me. And like I said, like the Baltimore Ravens are a team itself. So when I look at this, when I say to myself, Josh Allen, in order to beat the Baltimore Ravens, has to ball out. He has to ball out. I do not think that needs to be the case for the Baltimore Ravens. And that's not a knock on Lamar Jackson. That is a compliment on the team of the Baltimore Ravens. Same thing for the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, Jalen Hurts does not need to ball out. Lamar Jackson could game manage his way to a victory against the Buffalo Bills. I do not think the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen can do that against the Baltimore Ravens. That's just kind of the way how I view it. Which again, that is the argument as to why people have said that Josh Allen is more the MVP than Lamar Jackson. And like I keep saying, I'm not getting in that conversation. I've officially retired from that conversation because it just does not interest me. I'm yet to really see positive engagement in the comment section when we start to have those conversations, and it just, I just not about that right now, especially when they're playing each other on Sunday. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. This is just so many of the conversations about some of these teams. And I've made a lot of Eagles videos recently because so much of it was about Jalen Hurts being bad, Jalen Hurts being bad, Jalen Hurts being bad. And, this is another way of trying to downplay what Lamar Jackson does for the Baltimore Ravens, right? By pretty much saying who's more important, Lamar or Henry. And it's just like why are we having this conversation right now? I don't understand. And we know that it's brutally impossible to do that with a quarterback. It's why it's so hard for anyone to ever see someone be an MVP that's not a quarterback, because we know how important the quarterback position is. So I don't know. Sometimes I like to be forced into a corner to answer a question, as I've said many times, especially recently. It's fun to sometimes just get back in a corner and force yourself to answer a difficult question just for the sake of conversation, and it can be fun and interesting. I don't find that for this one. For this one, I'm just kind of like, what is question? What are we trying to accomplish here? What are we trying to accomplish? And I don't think it's anything positive or important. Not to mention, I don't think it makes sense, and I don't think it gets us closer to the truth. Sometimes you ask difficult questions and questions that don't always have answers, but through the process, it helps you get to closer to the truth of the moment, of the reality. in this instance, let's say you reach the conclusion that Derrick Henry is more important for the Ravens. Are we saying that that means that Lamar Jackson is actually not as good of a quarterback? Like that's what I can't grasp. And the last point that I'll drive home for all this to kind of prove this point is Nick just said that Derrick Henry is more important. You must have Derrick Henry. Okay, let's say that's true. If we replace Lamar Jackson and put on Patrick Mahomes on this team, will Nick say that same thing? And if the answer is no, if he says no, Patrick Mahomes is more important, well then tell me, what does Lamar Jackson do for the what would Patrick Mahomes do for the Baltimore Ravens? This specific Baltimore Ravens team, what would Patrick Mahomes do for this team that Lamar Jackson seemingly cannot? That would make Patrick Mahomes more important than Lamar Jackson. If you answer that question, then you have solved this riddle. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think? Who's more important for the Ravens, Lamar or Derrick Henry? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here. I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.